Good luck, Emer.
Hi, everybody. You're all very welcome to our Innovation in Practice session this afternoon. Thank you all for attending today. I think it's a sign of how far we've travelled since March that we are still able to hold this event despite the fact that we have moved to, or we will be moving to level 5, and that we are making those preparations. So thank you to everyone who has taken the time to be with us today, because I do know it's a busy day for everybody. One of the key reasons that we're here today is that the court service worked with EY to develop our innovation strategy. We worked with them earlier in the year. One of the key aspects of that strategy is to build our capability in the area of innovation and to introduce a culture of innovation to people in the organisation. We wanted to show you how innovation can be simple and small and easy to do. So that's part of what today is about. The event is going to be co-presented by myself, Emer Darcy. I work in the court service. I currently have responsibility for our response to COVID, but I also have operational experience. Gillian is with us from EY, and Aileen is here from Bord Iascaigh Mhara. And I'd like to thank both of them very much for coming along today. Gillian will be able to explain to us. He'll go through the agenda now in just a moment. And Aileen is the innovation facilitator in Bord Iascaigh Mhara. So she has got the scars and the trophies for adapting to innovation. So she's going to talk a little bit about their journey, and she's also going to show us some very, very simple tools about how you can start innovation at any point in time in your organisation. So Gillian, I'm going to hand over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emer, and hi everybody. My name is Gillian, as Emer mentioned, and I'm a director in EY, working primarily in technology consulting with a focus on emerging and digital tech. And through the engagement that we would have had with the courts earlier this year, we, as Emer said, we put together the innovation strategy. And really what we wanted to talk about today as part of our Public Service Innovation Week is really looking at innovation in practice. So to first off, just what is innovation, and to really take down what is a nebulous concept and break that down, really just look at it in a very simple way. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the types of innovation. So there are 3 types of innovation that have been identified. We call them archetypes within some of the reports that have been developed in this country. And we're just going to walk through those. And then we're going to give examples of those, 2 from the courts and then 1 from just the broader public service. And then at that stage, both Emer and I will hand over to Aileen, and Aileen's going to get us started in innovation. She's going to talk to really what it takes, what it requires, and some really good tools and hints and tips to get innovation moving. And then finally, we'll take any questions and answers. But do feel free to write any questions into the chat as we progress through the call, and we'll get to them at the end. So to start off, what we have planned to do is just kind of look at what is innovation. So what we're going to do is start with a simple temperature check. So if we move to the next slide, yeah. So we have a capability called Mentimeter. So if everybody wants to go to menti.com, so if you take out your mobile phones, and if you want to go into menti.com, menti.com, and you can type in the number there where you'll be asked to participate in the survey or in the Menti poll. So the number is 82 25 76 and then 7. And really it's going to be, what does innovation mean to you? And what we're going to do is we're going to just see those live. While you're loading Mentimeter, what I'll do is just talk about, the expectations of what innovation is from the public service. And really it's around creating a service that adds value. So that's really the focus there. So if anybody has forgot the code on the Mentimeter from the previous slide, if you just look at the top of this screen now, you'll see again the 82 25 76 7, and you can see that we're already starting to get some results. So making a change, something adding value, something that's new. What else? So we have others there coming through. So adapting services, solving a problem, and all of these are true. Good ideas, working smarter, absolutely. So these are kind of the key things. So we just wanted to take really that temperature check, just to see kind of where people were in terms of innovation and what they thought. And I think that a lot of these are they're all right. There's no wrong answer here. But what you'll see is really a framework in the next section, which is just kind of thinking about how these pieces come together. So new ways of doing things differently, Ideas for change, being creative, yeah, working smarter, definitely. Improving current processes, making it more efficient or effective, problems being solved, ideas for change, smarter working, yeah. This is great. We have over 21 responses already, so really great that people are engaged. Energizing, using creativity to make changes, improving processes, great. And that really does sum up innovation. I like that one that's just come through there about unlocking value. I think that's a really nice phrase to use, because there is a lot of the time there's locked up value in organizations, whether that's people's skills or knowledge or just the way that we're doing things. So I think that's a really good one. Doing things differently, how they've done before, more efficient, improving current processes, adding value. Yeah, absolutely. New approaches to drive efficiency. Okay, so I think that's a really good poll, and great to see that 30 people have responded to that. So really thank you all for participating in that. And that really does set the context. In terms of what our Public Service 2020 report points out, and the SRSS report that was done for the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform, they defined innovation as the creation of a new viable offering value. And they then talked about an innovation ecosystem as a network where actors connect and co-create to advance innovation outputs. And I particularly like that focus on the viable offering, adding value, and also co-creation. And we've got some really good examples, even within the courts of co-creation of value, particularly when we think about the jury centralization and the work that would have been done with revenue. So I think that's a really nice place to start. So if we just move to the next slide, what we're really going to do is just focus a little bit more on what is innovation from the concept of types or archetypes. So the SRSS report, which I talked about previously, has given this view of archetypes, or 3 archetypes of innovation. These were adopted from a model of innovation which was created by, which was presented in the Harvard Business Review about 10 years ago. And what it looks at is 3 types of innovation. So core innovation, adjacent innovation, and transformative or transformational innovation. And the archetypes here have been adapted from their original purpose, which is around creating new products and value for customers. But if we look at the core, it's really around the digitization or optimization of existing public services or products. So this is where you're using things like Lean Six Sigma, where you're adapting a process, making it a little bit more streamlined, maybe some digitization. The next is adjacent, and this is where we develop new solutions that would build on existing services or products provided by government. Public sector leads, but involves businesses or citizens in co-creation. So if we think about new services that would have been launched, a good example here might be the recent development of the app for COVID, for example, by the HSE. It was a new solution. It was built on existing services in that, the underlying data was coming from the kind of core healthcare arena. It was led by the public service, and it involved businesses and citizens to be able to develop it. It's a really good example. And then transformational then is where we create something wholly new, which is co-created to tackle complex challenges where the citizen or the customer leads the development of the breakthrough, and the public sector forms part of the ecosystem. So this is really where we get into that kind of upper right, what they would call the upper right quadrant. And this is kind of a lot of where the breakthrough ideas would come from. In terms of an organization, in terms of where it should focus, is there any particular area that should be doubled down on? Well, from the research that's been done, what organizations have found is that typically a balanced scorecard for innovation would look like 70% in the core bucket, 20% in the adjacent, and 10 in the transformational. So if you have 100 euros to spend on innovation, you should be spending 70 euros down at the bottom, 20 in the middle, and 10 on top. Okay. What's interesting is that the inverse is true for the return on investment. So for that 100 euros that you invest, typically the return will come from 10% down in core, 20% in adjacent, and you'll see about 70% return in transformational, just because of the breakthroughs that it can produce. So really worth just calling that out. And that's a really nice way to think about innovation. So when you're coming up with ideas, you're thinking about them, and you're presenting them for the call for ideas or for the public service challenge, really think about them in those segments. What would be core, what would be adjacent, and what would be truly transformative. So with that, we're going to look at specific examples. So for the core idea, I'm going to hand over now to Emer, who's going to take us through the first of the innovations. So Emma, over to you.
Thank you, Killian. You're probably looking at this going, lads, what are you talking about? We wanted to show you how the optimization of something that exists can be something that is so simple. You do not need to be the director of moonshots, as he's called in Google, to come up with an innovative idea. It is a simple thing that you take something that exists and you try to make it use better for the purposes that you have. So here's one of the simplest ideas that came up in the court service as part of our response to COVID, but actually it solved a very large problem. So the shredding contractor was to change over. They had delivered consoles, the new one had delivered consoles to offices. They were taking up floor space. The old ones were still sitting there because they couldn't come and collect them. So our very clever people in the estate management unit started getting calls from public offices about how we were going to allow people to deliver papers to our court office in a way that was safe and in a way that didn't mean that we had footfall coming through the building, because that's what we need to do during COVID. We need to reduce footfall. So they took the old shredding consoles, took all the logos off, created one per office. It's a lockable solution. And now they're right in the reception of Phoenix House. So now law agents, solicitors can walk in, they can deliver their post to the relevant shredding box, and the offices can come down and collect that information. So that is taking something that already existed, repurposing it, and using it to solve a different problem. And that's part of what core innovation is. So we want you to understand that it doesn't have to be a life-changing, huge IT revolutionary product to be innovative. And as Killian referenced earlier, 70% of the money is spent in and around the core innovation. So this is where lots of those small change ideas can actually make a big difference to service users. So if we go on to the second example, which focuses on adjacent. Now, adjacent innovation is about taking a solution that already exists and building on it. And the way that we did this in the court service was through software that we'd been using called PEXIP. Now, PEXIP had been put in place for a very, very specific purpose. It was to enable a witness to give secure evidence into a courtroom that was fully tech-enabled. And it was a way to protect the giving of evidence, particularly from people in other jurisdictions. So PEXIP had a very, very specific purpose, and security around the evidence giving was absolutely key. But during COVID, we had to move and adapt to that. So it moved then to become a service that could be offered by way of court service laptops. So you did not need the courtroom. You didn't physically have to use a tech-enabled courtroom to be able to have video evidence be given. So hearings started to be used through PEXIP. There were lots of changes needed, but that's what IT and other people did. They fed into a group, they looked at the changes, they looked at the functionality to try to get the best out of that existing situation. So now the registrar can take control of the hearing, the registrar can run it more like a court. It's still not perfect, but it is facilitating us in being able to do our business remotely during the pandemic, which again, just like our drop boxes and our shredding bins being repurposed, all helps to reduce the footfall coming into our buildings and deliver better and safer service for everybody. So Killian, I'll hand over to you in relation to the last topic.
Thanks, Emma. Yeah, so the last one is transformative innovation. So really this is around creating new value and really creating that transformative radical approach. And the one we wanted to focus on here, as we mentioned earlier, wasn't to do with the courts. It was the e-library that's been developed. But maybe first of all, let me just kind of talk about kind of really transformative innovation, which was brought around, I suppose, more broadly to books and buying books in bookshops. So what we would have seen was that Amazon, with Jeff Bezos and his company, they developed new capability around transforming the book first off to an online shop. So you could buy any book in the world from this online store, from this online platform, and it was delivered to your house. What we've seen though is that the business model, while successful, has continued to iterate and continue to be enhanced. So they brought out hardware models. So for example, the Kindle, and you can download books on the Kindle instead of having to get a physical book. The other point that they've, or the other capability that they've introduced is Audible. So Audible is a platform that you can either subscribe to or you just buy books on. But instead of it being a book, it's a recording, and they're developing their own content around that. So they've taken the book business away from the print shops, and they've made that into an online platform, and now they're giving people who might not be able to read the ability to listen to books and really engage in that medium. So they've really transformed the business. The other thing that they've introduced now is Amazon Prime as well. And through their Amazon Prime, they've developed their own logistics network. So what you can see is they're slowly eating the value chain, but transforming an area of business. So we looked at this and we thought about transformative innovation. And whilst we all started cocooning earlier in the year, and unfortunately we're going back to it now, Cork County Council's library service started delivering books directly to the doorsteps of its most vulnerable members. So literally they repurposed vans, they repurposed the library services and the people working in the libraries. So they would literally go out, bring books to elderly and vulnerable people and start using their offering in a very different way. What is another extension to that is what Libraries Ireland have done with the creation of a whole new online system for people to avail of ebooks, audiobooks and courses. And when we were developing the session for today and doing the planning around it, we reached out to Vinny at Deeper, to talk to Vinny Lannigan at Deeper to talk to him about transformative innovation. He just said, look up Libraries Ireland. And I must admit, I was flabbergasted by the capability that's available there. If you haven't been onto it, you can go in, you can look at audiobooks, courses, there's learning and development you can do, you can learn a new language on there. It's absolutely phenomenal what's been put together. And really just that embracing of digital technologies and those new service models that have become available to really drive innovation and change and make it so easy for the citizen or the customer to use. So really that is a very good example of transformative innovation. So now that we've been through the different types of innovations, and we've kind of put it into context, and also I think that everybody's shared their own thoughts on what innovation is, I want to hand over to Aileen, who's going to get us started, give us really the tour of how to progress an idea, how to take it forward, and with the frameworks that have been developed through an excellent publication that has been put together by the team, Buddies Givara. So Aileen, over to you.
Thanks, Killian. Thanks, Emer. And thanks for inviting me here today. I think my first slide is just coming up there. So as Emer said, I'm from Bordish Givara. I'm the innovation facilitator, a job that didn't exist 2 years ago, a name that didn't exist about 2 to 3 years ago within our organization. And today, I think I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the journey that myself and my team have been on to right now be in a good, happy place for innovation frameworks and tools and methodologies. So just to begin, I'll give you maybe the next slide, Siobhan, just a little bit of a background about ourselves. So just moving on there. So as I said, we are Bordish Givara, and we are an agency. We're responsible for the development of Irish sea fish. We're basically located, our head office is in Dunleary, but we have offices and officers located right around the whole coast of Ireland. And our client base is fishermen, aquaculture, processors, and anyone dealing up at the marketplace where we talk with our friends in Bord Bia. So when you guys at the court service talk about innovation, an awful lot of this is resonating with me because it's exactly the same thing over at our industry, which couldn't be more different to yours. So I'm going to talk to you today about the different types of innovation and what it means to us. So the first picture there, you can see some fishermen. Actually, just go back one slide, please. We work in, similar to yourselves, in core innovation, where we're helping these guys, to make small changes to make their industry better. That could be, new small changes to their operations on board a ship or on board a fishing boat. We also have adjacent innovation where we're working, in cooperation with our industry, to bring in new technologies, always to try and bring a value. And that value is usually to decrease costs or increase their market price. And then for transformational, we've a few of those projects underway as well, where we might have a whole section of, for example, whitefish processors working together to try and change the whole landscape of how they access new markets. And this has never been more relevant than in Brexit. And I don't want to mention the Brexit word in the middle of COVID, but basically it's extremely important now that everyone pulls together to get through one of our biggest challenges coming down our way. So it's all about changing your mindset and getting people to, to take on something new and to change the way that they look at things. So today I'm hoping to introduce that notion to you and to tell you how we start our projects and how we get going. So the next slide is just a quick slide about how important it is to change your thinking. It goes all the way back to the days of Einstein. So he always says, if you had an hour to solve a problem, you should spend 55 minutes looking at the problem and then about 5 minutes looking at the solution. But by our very nature, we tend to jump to the solutions, maybe a little bit too quickly without exploring all of the options. So today, I'm going to just take you on our journey as to how we changed that mindset. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to introduce you to the whole notion of the 3 lenses of innovation. And they say that when you look at things, a different way, you're just taking a different perspective. Using these 3 lenses is a very good approach. It's an internationally used approach. It's adapted from IDEO, who are an international organization of design thinkers. So what is desirability? Desirability is about figuring out who your customer is, what their needs are, understanding who this innovation is going to help. Feasibility is about, well, is it doable? Emer gave some great examples there of things that are perfectly doable. Sometimes they may not be as easy as or as adaptable as that. And the third lens is viability. And this is all about, the value of what your innovation is going to bring. In our case, it's usually monetary value because we're dealing with an industry and businesses. But in your case, it might be value, it might be time value, it might save time or make time. Successful innovations happen at the intersection of all these 3 lenses. So when you're thinking about a new idea or a new project, I'm going to show you how to start structuring your thoughts around these 3 lenses, and you will be amazed what you might see at the end. So if we can move to the next slide, I'm going to basically show you some of the tools that we use. So the very first tool that we use is called the challenge brief. And this is basically a very simple tool. You can see by the size of the boxes that the answers are going to be very short and very snappy. So it's when you have an idea, you're sitting at your desk and you're wondering, how am I going to capture this idea so I can go show it to maybe Emer? So what you do is on the left-hand side, you just fill out a little bit of an introduction as to how you thought of this idea and a little bit about yourself. And then on the other side of the page, you're going to fill out a little bit about your, who you might feel that this is going to be of any value, a little bit about how you might think it might be technically feasible, and maybe a little bit about how much it might cost or how much it might actually save us. And it's very early stage thinking, but what it does is it's structuring your thoughts around your 3 lenses. I can take questions on these later, guys. If we'd like to move on maybe to the second tool. So the second tool is what we call the business model canvas. So this is actually a very, very useful tool, and we use it all the time. So once we finish our challenge brief and we've shown it to 1 or 2 people and we feel, yeah, this is definitely worth pursuing, we would move and do a little bit of a deeper dive. So what that might mean is maybe talking to some more people, maybe going out and asking some questions, around the office, or maybe at another agency, and just figure out, well, is this problem just with us, or maybe does somebody else have the problem, or maybe they've already done something about it. You might have to think about a little bit more about what resources you might need. Maybe it's time resources, maybe you might need to bring in resources from outside. So it's just a bit of a deeper dive, but the beauty of this is that it's all on one page, and it's 9 boxes, and it's 9 smart guesses at the start of a project. You do not need to know all the answers, but you're just doing a deeper dive into the areas that you know. And what this will do is it will highlight some of the areas that you might feel, actually, I don't know much about that, and you might need to go and do a small bit of research. So that's the business model canvas. What I would do is I would go online to Strategizer or just Google business model canvas. And there are excellent, literally 3-minute videos on YouTube, which show you, you know, how this is filled out and how useful it can be. One good way of using it is print it off, stick it up on the wall, get some Post-its and invite people from your team or from the office next door to come in and have a look at your idea, and you know, get them to fill out what they think or what they know, and it helps you get to, you know, a deeper dive and a little bit, you know, a little bit more knowledge around your project. But what it also does is it's also structuring your thinking and your thoughts into the 3 lenses of desirability, feasibility and viability. So I'm hoping my third tool might come up next. Do we have a third tool? We do. So the third tool that we use all the time is called the challenge statement, or you could also call it the opportunity statement. So bear in mind now, you've had your challenge brief, which is a very quick, you know, back of the envelope type tool, a deeper dive with the business model canvas, and now you're moving to the challenge statement. So you're getting a fairly good picture of what your opportunity or your problem or your idea is. But what you're going to do now is you're going to structure it into one sentence, so that when you share this with people, you know, you're giving them a very focused, reframed, you know, kind of idea as to what your project is about. So you just basically, on the left hand side, you can see the prompts there. So the sentence reads like this: given that, and you highlight the pains that you found out, how might we help? And you're identifying who you're helping. So you're really focusing in on the user here, and you're helping them to do something. So you're helping them to achieve something, or to feel better about something, or to do something new. And then the last line is so that, and you fill out so that they can address the problem that's been highlighted, or they can address some of their needs. So Emer, I'm going to have a stab at your example from earlier. You know, it's like, how might we, given that the courts need extra privacy, how might we help how might we help the courts judges to take advantage of a new digital app so that they can access the people and from being remote, and that they don't have to come into the court. So it kind of tries to structure your idea into one sentence, and this is something that you can take with you for the duration of your project. If the project starts to change, because we all know projects start to change and grow legs, and they start to kind of go out of scope, you can always bring the team back. This is what we agreed on. This is exactly, so if your project changes, then your challenge statement has to change with it, so that everyone stays, focused on the one thing. So I hope that's clear. That's 3 tools. Anyone can use them straight away. You don't need a degree or a master's or anything like that. So the next thing I'm going to show you is where this all goes. So you've started, you have your challenge brief, you have your business model canvas, you have your challenge statement. You're now in a really, really good place to start moving your project into what we might call ideation, or you're going to try and, bring in some people and try and think of as many different ideas as to how your idea might work. And then once you choose, we have lots of tools to do this. I don't have time to go through those today, but Emer, I'm sure you can make some of those available to everybody here today because we have them all in a book. You move on to your ideation and you pick, basically the team picks the best idea, and then you move that idea and you prototype your idea. And this is where my Dermot Bannon example comes in. Dermot Bannon uses a prototype when he's building a house. He builds a little mini version of the house to show his clients. That's a prototype. That's you never sell a prototype, but it just is a focal point that people can touch and feel and empathize with. So if you need to make changes, that's where you need to make them. Once you're happy with your prototype and everyone's happy, then you move on to pilot, and you basically build a very kind of a low-level version of your idea, a cheap version if possible, and you give it a go in real life with a small audience. And if then there are any smaller tweaks or changes before you go to scaling it up, that's the time to do it. You do it at the pilot. And then when everything is hunky-dory, off you go. The sky's the limit. You scale up your idea. So I really hope that that is helpful for one or two people out there anyway. These are the tools that we've used on our journey, and we're using them now extensively across BIM, this whole notion of 3 lenses. We fail along the way. It's important to know that as well. Failure is all a part of innovation. I would like to extend an invitation to everyone to join a conversation that's happening on all about innovation and tools and techniques, and it's a group that's formed recently. It's called Innovate Ireland, so it's north and south, and it's non-commercial. It is informal, and it's like a chat where you can come and meet people. And the next meeting is on the 30th. It's a lunchtime meetup. I know Aidan McCullen is going to be speaking at the next one, so that could be very, very interesting. So please go on to www.innovateireland.net and you will be spot on with the latest tips and tricks around innovation. So thanks again, Emer and Killian and the team. And I think we're handing over to questions now.
Absolutely, Aileen. So thanks for that. I think that was really informative. And I love the models and the tools because they just make it so real and so, I suppose, user-friendly as well. We have a couple of questions already, so maybe I'll start with the first one, which is to both Aileen and Emer, which is, do you find working from home a barrier to innovation? So Aileen, do you want to start with that?
So I think there's 2 answers to that, yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes, in the sense that I'm based in Clonakilty, down in West Cork, for anyone that doesn't know, and we basically have an innovation hub there. So we got like 2 seconds notice to say we were all going to be working from home. A lot of my job involved meeting people, running workshops. You know, we have a cool room with glass walls and all sorts of things for using our tools that I just showed you. We had to flip over at an instant's notice to work from home. And to be honest, being used to having, having to be flexible and having to deal with ambiguity, I think we just adapted and we started doing stuff online. We started getting really good on Teams, so a kind of a forum like this. And to be honest, it's actually worked out in our favor in the end because we can reach people much easier. Our clients are based around the whole coast of Ireland, and it's never been easier to get meetings with people. Whereas before you might have to drive to Killybegs. If anyone knows how far away that is from West Cork, I don't think you can get much farther in the country, for 1 or 2 meetings, and it takes a whole day to drive there. So for us, for me, it's a bit of a win-win, but there's no beating the face-to-face, to be honest. I do miss that. So it's a kind of a 50-50.
It is, and I think we're seeing within our own client base, we'd be seeing that as well, Aileen. Well, some are really embracing it, and in particular situations, it's fantastic. There's others where you just want to be in a room, you want to be with a whiteboard, and you'd love to be there in person. What one of my colleagues has said, and I think he termed this quite well, is that for every kind of month or 2 months that goes by within this COVID setting, it's almost like a year of digital maturity, because everybody just has to get up that digital curve, and people are being forced to change. And if you think about, policies even that would have come out of government recently, or even kind of guidance documents, for example, if we think about cloud first, like it's kind of proving itself now that actually you want to be in the cloud, you want to be fully engaged, fully enabled with a workforce from wherever it is in the world, or wherever it is in region, for example. So absolutely get that. Emma, what about from the court's perspective in terms of working from home a barrier? I know you've done a huge amount of innovation through COVID and to enable both working from home but also virtual sittings. How has it affected your own role?
Well, I think a bit like Aileen said, we still don't have everything we in place. We don't have all of the legislation and the changes to the world to fully support everybody working from home. So that's the first thing. We remain an essential service. Our staff still have to physically come into buildings, but a lot of things have changed to allow people to work from home. And one thing that I feel has been, I'm on my third IKEA desk assembly and renovating how, reusing how our house works, because we had 3 people working from home at one point in time. So even having to adjust your home to make it a workspace, again, is an innovation in itself. You're looking at your space, you're looking at how you can make it work, but still allow your family to exist around you. And I'm very lucky in that I haven't had to also provide childcare or look after people who have specific needs. So, all of those challenges mixed in together is extremely difficult. But, our CEO launched Innovation Week, and one of the things that she genuinely thought was one of the best afternoons that she's had is when we had our call for ideas online, our celebration, our award ceremony. We did not think an online award ceremony was going to work because we thought, you'd miss the interaction. But actually, the people who presented, they got everybody's focus. Everybody was focused on listening and paying attention to what they were saying. Whereas if that was in a bigger room, there would have been lots of distractions. So I definitely think that there's huge positives to it, because we just have to get on with it and we have to adapt to it. And we've had no choice but to change our mindset. But on the flip side of that, nothing beats sitting in the room, having the chat and people sparking off each other over a cup of tea, or hopefully in not too distant future, something even stronger. But yeah, I think I'm with Aileen on that one. Absolutely.
There's some really great questions coming through. So the next one I'm looking at is just top tips for building a culture of innovation in an organization. So maybe just to start that one off, just from the project that we did with Deeper and with yourselves, I think there were a couple of key points that came out for me in terms of developing that culture. I think the first one is people need the psychological safety to innovate. That they're not afraid of failure, that they're willing and prepared to put forward their ideas, that they don't feel that they're going to be castigated if it goes wrong, and that kind of whole piece. I think the second is giving people space and time to do innovation in terms of accepting that it shouldn't be a side of desk piece, that it should really be about embedding it into everyday activity and thinking, if you're a frontline officer, how can I improve things, for my customer interactions? If it's in the middle of the back office, thinking about how can we improve things. And then finally, I think there's a piece around the top level leadership, directing or giving the sense and the purpose from the top that we are changing. We're in a new environment. We want to change for the better. And I think, it's credit to yourselves on that, particularly with the modernization program. You've really put a stake in the ground that we want to really foster this and grow it and develop it and bring it to the next level. It's almost like Court Service 2.0 or 3.0, something like that. But those 3 things would probably be key for me. So maybe Aileen, from your own perspective, in terms of how did you bring this culture into Bodies Kiwara? Again, a very traditional business or a very traditional organization in terms of, the fishing and the seafood industry. How did you bring that to bear both internally and then changing the narrative externally with partners to get them really focused that you're there to drive innovation?
That's a very good question. I think it's an ongoing work in progress, I would always say. We've been on this journey of innovation where we've taken, the tools and made them our own, made a framework that suits the kind of work that we do. But I think for me, the most important thing that I've learned around culture is the people. And you mentioned about a culture of failure, that you need to make sure that you create a safe space for people to fail. Sometimes rewarding failure is a good thing, because that's where we learn. With every one successful idea, there could be 100 failures behind it, and that's how we learn. But by our nature, we don't like to fail. So it's about creating this environment where that's okay, and giving people the confidence, and building their capability is very important. Equipping them with the right tools so that they can fail quick and fail fast and fail cheap. And that's the kind of service that we offer to our client base. So let's say they want to try out, let's say a fish processor wants to extend the shelf life of his fish using new packaging technology, for example, because instead of going to the Irish market, maybe he wants to access the French market. So he might bring that problem to us. So we try to de-risk this problem for him. So we have, we can do kitchen trials. We have small scale equipment that we can, run a kind of a small test to make sure that, okay, before he makes a huge investment, we can fail the idea quickly, cheaply, and de-risk it for our organization. So we build relationships then, and they begin to trust us and trust our process, because you have to be able to trust those tools, because they do work. They're proven that they work. And I think by bringing that in, we also bring in a bit of new blood every year, some new graduates, and it's always great to change things up a little bit, and get some fresh thinking in. And I think it's never an easy one, but I think it's something that you have to keep working at and believe in what you're doing. But I think people, end of story, it starts and it finishes with your people. So I think give them the tools, and you can't go wrong.
Absolutely. And Emer, if I put the same question to yourself in terms of that culture of innovation, but there's also been a kind of a follow-on question that's come through the chat there, which is, we've made all this traction and we've made all these advancements during COVID. How are we going to keep that innovation momentum going forward and really double down on it as part of our culture going forward? So maybe Emer, if you have any thoughts on that one.
Sure, and I think the answer that I was going to give possibly ties into the second part of, or that second question. For me, I think so two of the most important things that need to be done is, one, you have to trust your frontline staff. You have to trust and I don't mean necessarily frontline at a public counter, I mean the people who are delivering the service. You have to trust them to understand where there's blockages in the system. And you have to listen when they tell you that there's a blockage in the system, and put those tools in place, as Aileen said, for them to figure out how we might unblock those situations, because they very often identify issues that the customer is having. They're through that process, they're identifying the customer pain points. So I think the link between the staff who are directly delivering services and understanding the people that you're delivering services for, where are they having problems, that you work together to come up with the best solution. And I have to say that as a manager, the biggest mindset change for me in relation to that was to give people true empowerment. So there's no point in me saying, you have permission to try, you have freedom to fail, I'm delighted to hear your ideas, if when somebody comes to me with an idea, they go, all right, now, what you should do is, because then as a manager, I have not given true empowerment. I am trying to take back control of the idea and the suggestion. And I think that's really important. And I have to say that one small tip completely changed my mindset. Does it actually matter if this slide says thank you or thanks? No, it doesn't. It's the same result, the same end result. So as a manager, I can let go of the language around that, because it doesn't matter, because the point is that we're saying thank you to people. It's not fundamentally changing what we're doing. Within the court service, as you know, we've got our innovation strategy, which will be launched in a couple of weeks. And our innovation strategy is about trying to work with and build what we have in the organisation, what we have achieved, and to not lose that momentum. That is the intention, that we will be building capability, we'll be introducing these tools, we'll be working with people as a pillar under our modernisation programme to start delivering changes to how we deliver service. So there's more details to follow in relation to our innovation strategy over the next coming weeks, but that is the intention, that we will keep harnessing that and keep involving people and make sure that we have a mechanism in place. So it's not just a once a year, maybe call for ideas. It might be that there's an ongoing way in which people can put forward those ideas using something like the tools that Aileen has suggested, where people have teased out their idea in the first instance. But at the end of the day, we have to deliver on those viable, desirable and feasible ideas. And that's the key part, I think, for making sure that we'll develop a culture of innovation.
Right, really good, Emer, and I think you're right. And to be fair, and I must say this, we did the innovation strategies with three other pilot organizations, and we were developing the strategy with Deeper. And the courts were always the first in our cadence of our meetings. They were the first to be tested, to do the road test on every single piece of documentation of capability we put in front of them. And they really rose to the challenge. So I'm just commend you on that as well. So it was really a great piece of work that was done. A follow-on question then, in terms of, I suppose, the current situation, PEXIP that was put into place. Do you see that as the future of the courtroom, or where do you see the future of the courtroom going? Will we always need to have these big physical buildings, as nice and all as they are, or do we think that'll change over time? Because I know one of the mantras when I was studying law myself was justice must be seen to be done. And what are the thoughts on that, Ema?
Now, that's where I'd have to dig out our 10-year strategic plan and read through it in detail. I can't, in the next 10 to 20 years, we are not going to have a situation where all courts, I'm going to rephrase that because I could be found completely wrong and they'd be rolling this out in 10 years to say she said. That we are looking, it comes back to that understanding customer experience. It comes back to understanding what can we change, what could become digital, how can we make the processes quicker, faster, easier, and just, are there things that could be taken out of courts altogether, so that we're looking at the entirety of the services, but we're linking it to the people that we have an obligation to deliver those services for, and who needs the service, how should it be delivered, how do we best meet their need. And again, I suppose it comes back to Aileen's tool about the challenge statement. We need to be very, very clear about what we are doing, because it might be lovely to put everything online and digital for the courts, but it might actually not be what people want or what people need, because I know that a lot of my colleagues will comment on the fact that people feel justice has been done when they get their day in court. They get to go to a courtroom, they get to experience the formal environment, they get to, the case is made, the judge makes a decision. And for some people, depending on the nature of the case, that's as much as part of the closure and the resolution of the issue as an actual resolution. You could do it online digitally, but people may not feel the same about it. So we have to find that right balance in terms of what people need, what they want, and what the best outcome is. So, then we're back into understanding from an evidence perspective, collecting our data and understanding the picture. So there's a lot of things to consider. So I think I've kept us all on the job for a little while longer anyway. Just we'll do our best to keep our show on the road.
Absolutely, and maybe just while we're going through the final kind of questions, I'm conscious of about 10 minutes left. We do have a final Menti poll, so maybe it's a good time to open that up now. And if we just want to move the slides to that one, just go back to Menti and just ask participants, and we've had a great audience on this webinar, just what's the kind of key takeaway from today's session. So if we just go back to menti.com in your phones, and you can put in the new code, and the code is actually the same. So it's 822576.7. and just what was your biggest takeaway from today's session? So, and while that's loading, Aileen, I might come back to you with a question which is around how do you take an idea forward? So within Buddies Givara, so within your own team, your own structure, if somebody has an idea, how do they take that from idea right through to delivery and implementation? Is there is there a model to do that? Can you talk us through that?
Absolutely. I can take you through maybe an example might be the easiest way to do that. So let's take a small two-person idea that came to our door a couple of years back, and they had this idea that they'd like to launch a new range of white fish fillets, so cod and hake and all those lovely white fish that I'm sure everybody eats, and they wanted to put them in a microwavable pack. This technology was new on the market. Nobody had it in Europe, let alone Ireland, and they felt that definitely this was going to be a runner. So before we knock any ideas on the head, we would bring them in and we'd go to our challenge brief and we'd say, right, just give me a small bit of more context about this idea. Then, okay, so if it starts to kind of look good and you feel we should really take this to the next stage, we would have done a deeper dive. We would have done a visit to Paris to visit the organization that had developed the technology. They were promising 3 extra days shelf life, which was going to be transformational for Irish seafood products because it meant we could now travel farther afield than Ireland and the UK. We could possibly hit a European market. So let's just take that idea. So we would have taken it in. We would have brought in a small piece of technology to test the shelf life and how the fish performed in the packs. We then would have done some cooking trials in our kitchens. So we have a kind of an industrial kitchen, and we would have taken it in and almost like just played around with it, played around with the shelf life and the flavors. Bear in mind, we're very fishy and we're full of technologists in our organization. And we then would have looked at the market. So would people actually, use? Would they actually microwave fish? We had no idea. So we had to go out, teaming up with our friends in Board BIA to find out, is there a need for this? Would people actually use it? Because there would be absolutely no point in launching this onto a market that didn't want it. So the feedback from the market was phenomenal. We got feedback that people don't like smelling, touching, feeling. They don't like skin. They don't like bones. They just want the fish on the plate. And this was providing a solution to all those things, because you could now cook the fish without touching it, without really having to do anything. The bones would be removed, the skin would be off. So we felt definitely there was a very strong need. We then looked at the viability option, so the cost of the investment, how long it would take for the company to pay back on the technology. And based on what we found, it certainly was still looking like our 3 lenses were overlapping. So we had a strong customer need and we had evidence of that. So if you go back to your business model canvas, we had strong evidence around the customer piece. We had really strong evidence that the technology, it was doable, and these guys had a small factory, so they were, they had a building that they could start off with, and the money side of it looked good. So we have tools around cost of investment and payback. So we moved to prototyping. We felt, yes, we could certainly do it. It was more than doable. It was just filleting a fish, putting it in the pack and running it through this new machine. And then we piloted, so we started selling it. They started selling it with one little shop. And if you fast forward a very short number of years, we now have skin pack technology, or sealed air, right across the chilled food cabinets. It revolutionized the entire selling of fresh fish, both here domestically and the UK and further afield. And I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the type of technology I'm talking about, where you peel off, it looks like it's got a skin on the pack. It made pack presentation much better on the shelf, and sales absolutely flew in. The success story of this is that they are now employing about 100 people in Cork and Bantry, and you know, it all started with one crazy harebrained idea that came to our door a very short number of years ago. So using our tools and techniques, we're always keeping an eye on the 3 lenses and making sure that they are overlapping. If any of those start to drift off, so the costs are too high, you don't do it. If it's just not doable, you don't do it. And if there isn't a customer need, you don't do it. You fail it and you go back. And I know somebody asked the question, do you have to start with this tool, or can you move and do the other tool first? You can use any one of your tools whenever you see fit. Think of it as a toolbox, and you're trying to do a job. You just pick out the tools that you need for that job. They are not, you know, in a straight line. You just, you know, you use them as you need them. And that's the beauty of innovation.
That's fantastic, Aileen. And I think I know the company you're talking about from Bantry, and I must say even their brand as well that was put together. They've got their own freezers now in the supermarkets. It's a very impressive capability that they put together, and fair play to them. I'm just looking at the biggest takeaways from today's sessions. I think look at the problem first is coming through there. People on the front line delivering services typically have the best knowledge on how to improve and innovate, and that is absolutely true. And the voice of the customer is crucial in innovation, and in terms of any transformation or any enhancement that's going to be put together. There was one going through there as well, which I saw about that innovation is happening in the courts. We don't always acknowledge it, because it's just a day-to-day routine. I think there was another one as well, which I saw around, you know, I don't have to be Elon Musk to innovate. There are 3 types of innovation. It's good to know that I don't have to come up with, you know, the next world best idea or whatever it is. We're not inventing Tesla here. Leadership is key. We're all innovating. Someone said they want fish for dinner now, which is great. You've really sold us the Aileen. So I think we've had over 49 people log into the Menti there. We've got some great ideas. I think there's been some fantastic questions throughout the session. We are coming out of time at the moment. We've only got a minute to go. So with that, I just want to hand over to Emma just to close out from the courts and just to finish up. So Emma, over to you.
Thanks, Cillian. Could I just thank everybody so much for their time today, for coming along at lunch. I know it's a pressurized day. Hope you found this webinar useful. I have to say a huge thanks to Peter, Bijoy and Siobhan from EY, who is fair to say have spent the last 24 hours teaching Emer how to use Teams, and it's been a very challenging experience for them. So thank you very much to everybody from EY and Cillian, you as well, of course. Aileen, thank you so much for your time as well, and also for having the patience while Emer learned how to use Teams, and for taking us the time to go through your innovation playbook and some of those tools. And I know that we'll be able to make the innovation playbook available to people, and we'll be able to circulate it more widely for people, which would be fantastic. And I also would like just to thank Maria and Pauline from our innovation team, who are doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes to get all this stuff up and running. And they were very kind and supportive to me as I responded to COVID issues so that we could still continue to get this webinar up and running today. So thank you so much to everybody who made this happen, and thank you very much to everybody for attending. And hopefully we'll be able to do something like this again soon. So thank you all.